probably seen some of your favorite judokas. You've probably seen Shosha Ono doing power cleans and full cleans and snatches. Maybe you've seen Anchan Grimm taking on the sport of CrossFit now, and you've seen him become an absolute unit, even though he always was. And you're thinking to yourself, oh, I'd really like to become like my favorite judokas. Maybe you're watching the Georgian team doing some big power cleans, lifting some heavy weights, squatting big weights, and thinking, is the power clean or even the full clean an important part of this process? Can I become like them? Can I become the best physical specimen for judo without the power clean? And the answer is yes. Yes, you absolutely can. You do not need it for judo. However, can the power clean or full clean be very, very useful for judo? Absolutely. Now, there's a lot of different sports that the power clean benefits. Most sports benefit from the use of the Olympic lifts if they're done in the right context. And it's the same for judo. The ability to maximally contract under load, very quickly relax these muscles, and then recontract again under load at high speeds is one of the main benefits of the Olympic lifts, and in this case, the power clean. So this ability is probably something you haven't necessarily thought about, but it's one of the reasons that a lot of different sports make use of the Olympic lifts. This ability dictates your ability to do any action in your sport, whether that be running, sprinting, jumping, throwing, whatever skill or power-based endeavor you're doing. Your ability to contract certain groups of muscles, relax these muscles, then really quickly contract the same or separate groups of muscles again is how you do powerful movements, is how you move faster, is how you do anything. Your ability when you're running to contract certain muscles, to retract them and relax them, contract the next series of muscles. If we can do this harder and faster, we're going to be able to run faster in theory. If same with judo, when we're throwing, our ability to contract here, pull these muscles in. If we're pulling someone close, then relax as we need to turn with them or whatever throw we're doing. This ability to do it really fast, but also really strongly, but also relax it really quickly after to move to the next sequence of muscles is so important. For example, if I contract my bicep here, if I have a grip and I pull someone in close, until I relax my bicep, I cannot change to the next portion of that movement if I need to. If I need to go from a position where I have a contracted bicep to a relaxed bicep to move on, if I'm in a position where I don't relax, I can't do the next portion, I'm stuck in this position. But if I'm slow when I'm relaxing my bicep, I'm not going to be able to throw someone as fast. And as you know, if you're doing judo, timing is incredibly important, almost more important than brute strength, definitely more important than brute strength. If you have both of them, that's really important, and we'll get to that in a second. But timing is incredibly useful. And this is one of the traits that is trained by the power clean that's not often talked about. So our ability to maximally contract, really quickly relax, so reducing this time window between this maximal contraction and this maximal relaxation of those muscles, and then recontracting again is trained really well by the power clean. So how does the power clean train that? So when we pull, we hit that full extension or whatever amount of extension we're hitting in the power clean. So we're maximally contracting a lot of muscles while also being very, very coordinated with them. We're contracting them really aggressively. This can only be done under load. We can't fake this amount of contraction with an empty barbell or a little bit of load. We do need to load it up a little bit. But when we get to these sufficient weights, we will contract a high number of muscle units. And then as we pull under, we need to relax these contracted muscles. So these muscles that have put us into this extension need to be relaxed to pull under. Then we need to contract again to catch the barbell in the rack position. So we've gone from maximal contraction, the extension, we relax to pull under, then very, very quickly contract again. This is one of the main benefits that most sports use it for, and it's one that you need in spades for judo, and it's one of the ways, it's not the only way, but in the context of this video, it's one of the really useful ways that we can use the power clean for judo. Now, we don't normally like to make S&C very sport specific. We don't try and mimic the sport in the gym. We look at what is the best way I can make my legs strong? What is the best way I can make my back strong? Then we look at what movements we can do in the gym. What ways can we load them progressively, safely, through a good range of motion with good technical practice, and let the sport take care of itself. And it's worked really well for us so far. In the sport of judo and actually other grappling sports, the power clean or the Olympic lifts are really useful because we've got these benefits that we talked about, contracting and relaxing, but we've also got this external body being moved around us that does somewhat mimic your sport. For example, if you are able to enter a match and you're 75 kilos, and if you can power clean 120 kilos, you have a great advantage over your opponent if your opponent can't do any power cleans. Now, of course, skill, timing, speed, psychology all come into this, but all other attributes being equal, if we're both the most perfect judokas, we have excellent technique, we're matched aerobically, anaerobically, we're matched with our intent to win, we're matched with our skill available to us, we're matched with our timing, and if it's coming down to who's got a little bit more brute strength, the ability to power clean 1.5 times your body weight, 1.2 times your body weight is going to give you a massive advantage. And training this in the gym is something that you won't necessarily be able to do in a very consistent, concise manner on the mats. Of course, if you're a 70 kilo athlete, you can try grappling with the super heavyweights. You can try grappling with your friends who are 120 kilos. It's not very fun. You're not going to be able to get many reps in unless you're practicing, which is good. But in the gym, we can load this progressively, we can load this intelligently, we can load this in a little bit of a safer manner. As you know, if you're 70 odd kilos and you have a 120, 130 kilo partner falling on you, it's not going to go really well for you. It's going to be a painful training session, especially if you're getting thrown by them as well. So when it comes to the gym and the power clean, this extra practice of moving an external load around your body at high speeds that require a lot of coordination is a really useful benefit that we get in judo that transfers from the power clean to the sport. So again, we're not worried about necessarily mimicking the sport, but it does just so happen that this is also an important benefit that we can transfer from the power clean to judo. Now there's a third benefit that the power clean gives you, or the full clean, in the sport of judo, and that is the benefit of bracing under load, under heavy load, under high speed, and staying coordinated while you're doing it. The power clean gives you this in spades. This is so useful. Again, it's another benefit that we don't always necessarily hear about. But if you can, for example, power clean 110, 120 kilos as a 75 kilo athlete, your ability to brace and catch a heavy load, especially if you can do this with good technique, is going to really help you on the mats, resisting a throw, obviously dictating the match, dealing out your throws, smashing people is great fun, but at the same time, we're always having a partner trying to throw us. So if we can resist that and get this multifactorial exercise that's going to benefit us in a lot of different ways, then you're going to be in a good position to hopefully resist those throws, be in a position where you can resist your throws and wait for your opportunity. If, for example, you watched Teddy Riner and the Korean judo athlete whose name is escaping me right now, for a lot of the match, I thought Teddy was stalling, but he was resisting those throws for ages at the Olympic final in Paris. And if you see at the end, when his opportunity was there, he had this capacity to resist these throws, to resist the pressure that the South Korean athlete was putting on him. Most of that match, that South Korean athlete was working him. He was pushing hard for him. And Teddy has this capacity to resist it. Now, I'm not saying Teddy has gotten this from doing the Olympic lifts, but you can get some of that benefit from the Olympic lifts. So if you can resist this and you get more accustomed to it, you build up your tolerance to this, you build up your max capacity to this, unless you meet someone who's an absolute unit in your matches, you're going to be much more efficient with resisting being throwed. And this is a really important aspect because this will increase your confidence and your efficiency on the mat when you're training a randori. Your ability just to stop a throw, resist that throw is trained really well by the power clean. What are the negatives we see with the use of the power clean in this context of judo and judo athletes trying to use the power clean for sport or the full clean? Well, the first is you're probably in a lot of pain and you likely have quite poor mobility. Whether these are related is another argument, but there's likelihood that your shoulders are sore, your elbows are sore, your wrist is sore, your fingers are sore, your back is sore, your toes are sore. There's a likelihood that at most of your training sessions, most of your year, something is probably sore, and these things are probably building up over the course of your training. And if you've been practicing judo for any reasonable amount of time as an adult, you probably have a lot of niggles that, you could get rid of them. You could spend some time rehabbing them. We could spend time doing soft tissue work and corrective exercises. They're not necessarily holding you back right now in judo. They're not necessarily holding back your other areas of S&C. But were you to try do something like the power clean, a technical movement that requires a lot of mobility, it's going to be a hard endeavor. It's probably going to hurt you more. It's probably going to irritate these injuries more. Reduce your capacity to do the rest of your S&C. Reduce, again, more importantly, your capacity to go on the mats and spar with people. So we've got this issue that the Olympic lifts are pretty low injury. In terms of acute injuries, we don't see people tearing ACLs, hurting meniscuses, tearing Achilles. We don't see a lot of that, a really low incident rate in the Olympic lifts and in the power clean. Now, you'll get some injuries that are acute, but they're quite rare. What we generally see from the use of the Olympic lifts is this chronic fatigue, this chronic pain from repeated use of the Olympic lifts. So if you think about the sport of judo, you get hurt a lot because it's high speed, heavy weights, external bodies, and it's the same kind of thing when it comes to the power clean. Now, while we can load them in an intelligent fashion, while we can make them nice and consistent and we can dictate that load really precisely in training, ultimately, if we have this training load from the rest of your strength conditioning, and we have this load from your randori and your mats and your sport-specific drills, it can be very hard, and I find this with judo athletes, it can be hard to find the time to justify practicing the Olympic lifts to a meaningful manner because you're always in pain. And that's one of the big ones, especially with the sport of judo, is that it becomes really difficult unless you're in a good physical condition to actually just consistently practice the Olympic lifts, or specifically the power clean. And even if you can, it's hard to justify it with the extra pain that they may add if you're already banged up. Now, to a lesser extent, the use of the power clean for judo is that it's somewhat technical. Now, a power clean for judo doesn't need to be the most perfect, most amazing technique you've ever seen. It doesn't need to be this gentleman here, Ilian power cleaning 200 kilos. It doesn't need to look like this. It doesn't need to be the most amazing technique. The technique you've seen Ono Shoshe, for example, using is more than sufficient. But how well he moves this belies just how long it can take to get to these weights while being very technical with the power clean. I would say if we're looking at you're in your 20s, you've been doing judo since a child or teenager, you're good at judo. If you've never done any form of power cleaning or any of the Olympic lifts, even with a good coach, may I humbly suggest, were we coaching you, you would still not see major weights being moved for probably 2 to 3 off seasons, if not longer. But that's with diligent practice, with smart technical loading, with good variations. That's also making the big assumption that you've already a pretty good base in strength and conditioning already, that you have a decent deadlift, that you have a decent squat, that you have some decent amount of mobility, and you're not going to get injured, and you have time to take an off season. So the technicality of the power clean for sport isn't as high example as a full snatch or a full clean and jerk for weightlifting. The technicality of the power clean is definitely a step ahead of the other strength training movements you're doing. It's not as complex as a lot of the throws in judo in terms of the sequencing. There's a lot more sequencing and coordination used in certain throws, but the issue with the Olympic lifts is you also need this physicality. So there's certain throws that you can do in judo where you don't need to be incredibly physically dominant, but when it comes to power cleaning, let's say we're aiming for that gold standard of 1.5 times body weight, you need a certain minimum level of physical capacity that needs to be trained at the same time. And that's what makes the Olympic lift so hard to master, is that while you can get the technique right with a barbell, but as soon as you add 40 or 50, 60 kilos, there's a good chance your technique is going to go out the window because you don't have the technique, but you also don't have the necessary physical capacity to complete the lifts. So what's my personal opinion as a coach? What do I often see? Is that we just don't necessarily need to use it a lot. You can replace the benefits of the power clean to a large extent, or such a large extent that you'll never really notice it in other areas in your training. Squatting, deadlifting, pulling, jumping, smart loading of those all can really bring you close or beyond if you do them enough in the sport of judo. We'll touch on that another time and what we find is useful replacements for it. But today I just wanted to talk about the pros and cons. For me, I see lots of intermediate to low level judo athletes just not using the power cleans. We just make use of these other bigger movements, these bigger barbell movements. We can certainly use them if you want to, but it definitely doesn't need to be done in the sport of judo. We can definitely make big progress. Now, is there benefits that if you can really master the full clean or the power clean that you're going to get that'll transfer to judo? Just a little bit. There is just a small bit extra that if you have this good base in your strength conditioning, if you're squatting double body weight, maybe you're squatting double body weight for reps, you've got a big pull, you've got a nice solid bench press, you've got a really strong upper body. And on top of that, if you can power clean or full clean 1.2 to 1.5 times body weight, even if you're counting for everyone else, there is just this little bit extra in physicality available to you. Now, does that transfer to the sport of judo? That is entirely up to you as an athlete. And my job then as a S&C coach is complete. That's up to you and your coach and your ability to actually practice your sport. But I do see that if you can really master it, you do get a slight edge. But does that matter for you if you need to finish this stack here, this good S&C stack? The chances are there's probably a lot of room to make up here. So dictating resources for it isn't necessary. It's not something where I'm like, oh, we have to be doing that. Whereas you came to me for judo, there's a lot of other things on the list that we're going to be taking off. We're going to be looking at back squatting, strong bench press. Often forgot about upper body strength is so important in judo. We'll often see these good squats and deadlifts, and we'll actually see a little bit of a lack in that upper body, and there's some good improvements you can make there. And then your conditioning, your anaerobic and aerobic conditioning can all be improved massively. And so by the time you start covering all these bases, it's like, okay, do we really need to spend more time in the power clean? Now, we can do it quite passively. We can spend 2 15-minute sessions a week practicing the power clean, empty barbell, 40, 50 kilos, practicing quite casually, and there's nothing really wrong with that if it's not causing a lot of pain. And then can you try and progress in weight slowly? But eventually you do need to cross this threshold of kind of flipping a switch and focusing on the power clean a little bit more. So if you would like to, for example, increase your squat or your bench, check out the Sika Strength app on iOS and Android. Run our squatting program. There's 2 squat programs, the Road to a Near Squat program. There's the Sika Bench program. There's a power clean program on the app. There's also a combat sports program on the app. 7-day free trial for everyone who signs up. You can run 2 programs at once for your subscription, and you can change between these at any time. You also get access to the Facebook group where you can ask questions, take part in live streams where we give feedback on what you need to do on your technique. So check that out in the link below, and I hope your training is going well.